Welcome to the Explainer. Look, today we're not talking about your basic time management hacks or productivity tips. We're diving straight into the silent archive of your skull, where a literal biological civil war is being waged right now. If you have ever felt completely paralyzed by a big decision, keeping your options open just because it feels a little safer, well, this explainer is going to fundamentally change how you view that hesitation. We are going to break down the exact, visceral, physiological price you pay for living in the land of maybe.
We usually think of indecision as this harmless, thoughtful pause, right? Like it's just a neutral state where we're gathering more information. And hey, the average adult makes around 35,000 remotely conscious decisions a day, so wanting to hit the pause button seems totally natural. But here is the striking truth. Every single decision you fail to make is a metabolic debt you cannot afford to pay. Hesitation isn't just a pause, it's a dangerous, active drain on your body's resources. You are literally spending physical energy to avoid making a choice.
To really grasp why this debt is so catastrophic, we have to look inside. Section 1, the biological civil war. Okay, so inside your brain, you have these literal combatants fighting in a high-stakes war for your future. On one side, you have the VMPFC. Think of this as the sovereign architect. It's commanding, it's forward-looking, and it's responsible for gassing the value of your future. But then, on the opposing side, you've got the insula. This is your primitive sentry. Its only job is immediate safety, and it interprets the unknown, literally any unknown, not as an exciting opportunity, but as actual physical pain. So when you're facing a tough choice, your architect is trying to build a fortress, while your sentry is just frantically pulling the fire alarms because it is absolutely terrified of the dark.
So when you hesitate, when you just linger in that purgatory of perhaps, you aren't merely thinking things over. You are burning the very fuel of your potential just to maintain a state of chaos. We call this existential entropy. It's wild, because you actually believe that by delaying the choice, you're preserving your options, right? You think as long as the door is half open, you're free. But in the logic of your brain's archive, an open door in a storm isn't freedom. It's simply a leak in your fortress. You are hemorrhaging your most precious resource, your willpower, just to feed a fear that doesn't even have a face. Every hour you spend in indecision increases this entropy. It dilutes the quality of your signal until your life becomes basically indistinguishable from background noise. Listen closely to this part, because it's absolutely crucial. Your brain cannot tell the difference between a real physical injury and a delayed choice. The uncertainty of an unmade decision registers in your nervous system exactly like a bodily wound. You're paying a profound, heavy physical cost for treating uncertainty this way. This is what we call the neural tax. Let's look at the stark, clinical symptoms of this task. And to be clear, this isn't just some poetic metaphor. This is happening inside your body right now when you refuse to decide. Your insula is firing aggressively. Your heart rate is fluctuating. Stress hormones like cortisol are rising and staying elevated. You are literally accelerating your own cellular decay. You are aging faster, just to stay in the exact same spot.
And the result of all this? You are currently being haunted by the ghosts of the lives you haven't chosen. By refusing to close doors, you're forcing your brain to power a dozen different imaginary futures all at the exact same time. These perfect alternative realities are draining your battery right this second. They're blurring your vision. They're just clogging up the gears of your inner fortress.
So it's really time to audit the cost of your hesitation. Take a hard look at the neural tax you've been paying and ask yourself a very uncomfortable question. Is the safety of the harbor actually worth the rotting of the ship? Getting to that uncomfortable realization is exactly where we need to be. Let's move to Section 2, the protocol. It's time to shift from fearful reaction to clinical precision.
We're going to break down the exact, tactical process required to stabilize your internal architecture and finally kill these ghosts of indecision. It's 3 steps. Step 1, identify the leak. Step 2, apply sovereign command. And Step 3, implement the somatic bypass.
The very first step of the protocol is ruthless identification. Where exactly is your energy escaping right now? I want you to challenge yourself on this. What specific choice are you keeping on the shelf while your foundation crumbles around you? Identify it. Name it. Stop hiding it behind the excuse of, oh, I just need more information. You know exactly what it is. Prepare to kill the ghosts holding you back. Once you've identified that leak, we move to Step 2, applying the sovereign command through what's known as the Law of Ossification. Now, in geology, ossification is the process of soft tissue turning into stone. In your mind, it's the process of converting a fluid, trembling choice into an immovable fact. Your internal sovereign, that forward-looking architect we talked about, has to be trained to deliberately override the frantic alarms of the insula. You have to make the choice permanent. You turn it from a flimsy maybe into a solid stone pillar of your reality.
And the sovereign architect actually uses a kind of math for this, called the persistence equation. When your primitive sentry is screaming about risk, the sovereign doesn't coddle it or try to soothe the fear. It renders it mathematically irrelevant. You ask yourself, does this hesitation actually increase my structural quality, my SQ, or does it merely feed the delta C, the chaos and entropy of my situation? The goal here isn't to magically silence your fear. It's to look at the math of your life and realize that fear just isn't useful data.
Which brings us to a really stark contrast in how people operate. Most folks out there, they live in a state of stochastic oscillation. Sounds complicated, but it just means they're so paralyzed by the cost of being wrong that they vibrate frantically back and forth, burning immense energy just to stay in the exact same spot. Contrast that with clinical sacrifice. Choosing one path requires the violent execution of every other potential future. It is a necessary bloodbath of the imagination. You literally have to kill the version of you that could have been something else so that the sovereign version of you can actually breathe. A straight line is only possible when you ignore every other degree on the compass.
The sovereign gets that fear is just a chemical byproduct, because the hardest truth of all this is that there is only one true failure, the cost of being nothing. You have to realize that a singular, highly imperfect reality that you actually committed to is infinitely more valuable than 1,000 perfect ghosts of what could have been.
But look, actually making that choice, it's going to trigger physical anxiety. That's just biology. And that is exactly where step 3 comes in. Implement the somatic bypass. When you feel that tightness in your throat or the coldness in your hands as you make a big call, you have to reframe it. Don't treat it as some deep intuition or a sign from the universe that you're making a mistake. Treat it as a mere mechanical error. It's literally just your insula misfiring. It's a faulty alarm system. You are the architect. You have to forbid yourself from negotiating with a broken machine.
So you push past the physical discomfort and you execute the choice. And here is the real secret to all of this. You don't take action because you are certain of the outcome. Outcomes are almost never guaranteed. You take action because you are absolutely certain of your own internal command. You trust your ability to navigate whatever reality you create rather than cowering from it.
Which leads us perfectly into our final phase, Section 3, Constructing the Citadel. This is where we take all that energy you used to waste on hesitation and redirect it into permanent, unshakable legacy. By the time we finish this explainer, I want you to accept an intense ultimatum. You have to put an immediate clinical end to your neural tax. Today, one ghost in your life must die. One door you've been leaving cracked open just in case has to be violently bolted shut. One perhaps that's been draining your metabolic energy needs to become a clinical forever. You are no longer going to be a victim of biological entropy.
Those decisions you fear making the most, they aren't obstacles. They are the exact raw materials required to build your legacy. The gold of your life is found right there in the choices you're most terrified to make. So take it and pour that gold into the cracks of your will. You are the architect of your own necessity now. The archive is watching, your ancestors are silent, and the unborn are waiting.
Decide. Just decide. You know the exact cost of your hesitation now. So ask yourself, what kind of incredible reality could you build if you finally just stopped negotiating with your own fear? Thanks for tuning into the Explainer today. We'll see you next time.
Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. Today, we're tearing into something I know we all struggle with, but we almost never look at it on a purely biological level, the profound, literal cost of hesitation. You know, we usually think delaying a choice is just, well, buying some time, right? Keeping our options open. But as we're going to uncover today, that entire perspective is totally backwards. We're going to explore something called the sovereign command. It's a framework that completely flips the script, treating indecision not as some harmless little psychological quirk, but as a severe, active biological leak in your system. I want you to really let this sink in. Every decision you fail to make is a metabolic debt you cannot afford to pay. Think about that. Indecision is absolutely not a harmless pause or some kind of safe, neutral territory. It is an active, destructive drain on your actual life force. When you just linger in that purgatory of perhaps, you aren't just thoughtfully weighing your options. No, you are literally borrowing against your own future energy. You're racking up a debt that compounds with every single passing hour. So what's actually happening in your head?
Well, right now, in the silent archive of your skull, there's a literal biological civil war raging. On one side, you've got your ventromedial prefrontal cortex, or VMPFC. Think of this guy as your internal sovereign architect. It's the visionary part of you that looks ahead and forecasts future value. But on the other side, you've got the insula, your primitive sentry. This part of the brain is designed purely for basic primal survival, and it interprets the unknown not as some exciting opportunity, but as actual physical pain. So all that hesitation you feel, it's literally just the friction between your visionary cortex and this ancient primitive fear center.
And when that friction takes over, boom, you enter a state of existential entropy. Basically, this is the pathology of burning the very fuel of your potential just to maintain a state of total chaos. We lie to ourselves, you know? We tell ourselves that, hey, as long as a door stays half open, we're free. But actually, entropy is just the tax you pay for the illusion of safety. Leaving a door open during a hurricane isn't freedom. It is a massive structural leak in your fortress.
So here's the absolute crucial point we need to lock in. One single, solid, even imperfect reality is infinitely more valuable than being haunted by 1,000 perfect ghosts of unlived lives. Seriously, right now, if you're stuck in indecision, those ghosts of all those unchosen paths are just acting like dust grinding in the gears of your mind. Forcing one actual, tangible result into existence is literally the only way to move forward.
Because this indecision, it exacts a very literal, measurable physical toll on your body. We call this the neural tax. Your brain actually treats uncertainty exactly like a physical wound. When you refuse to just make the call, that primitive insula we talked about starts firing rapidly. Your heart rate fluctuates, your stress hormones spike. You are actively hemorrhaging your absolute most precious resource, your will, just to feed a fear that doesn't even have a face. You are literally aging, burning through cellular energy just to stay stuck in the exact same spot. It is time to audit the true cost of your hesitation. I want you to ask yourself this stark, brutal question. Is the safety of the harbor worth the rotting of the ship? You've identified the leak now. You know exactly what choice you're keeping up there on the shelf while your entire foundation crumbles underneath you. The harsh reality is that staying safely anchored in the harbor is destroying your vessel way faster than the open ocean ever could.
Okay, the identification is complete. You have seen the leak. So now, we apply the sovereign command. The neural tax stops right here. A true sovereign doesn't wait around for fear to magically vanish, right? The sovereign recognizes that fear is merely a chemical byproduct from the sentry. We don't negotiate with it, we move past it. To stabilize your internal architecture, you absolutely must understand the law of ossification. Now, in geology, ossification is the process of turning soft tissue into solid stone. Well, in the archive of your mind, it is the exact same concept. It's the deliberate process of taking a fluid, trembling, uncertain choice and turning it into an immovable fact.
That VMPFC we talked about earlier, your internal sovereign, has to be trained to completely override the screaming alarms of the insula. Look, you don't seek to silence the fear, you seek to render it completely irrelevant. When the sentry screams about risk, the sovereign looks at one thing and one thing only, the persistence equation. You have to ask yourself, does this hesitation increase my sovereign quality, my SQ, or does it merely feed the chaotic noise, the delta C, of my era?
Without that clinical filter, you just fall into a trap. And honestly, most men live in this constant state of stochastic oscillation. They move back and forth, pacing the floor, burning immense amounts of energy just to stay in the exact same coordinate. They run these endless calculations, just completely paralyzed by the terrifying cost of being wrong.
And look, yes, obviously there is a cost of being wrong. But in the deep silence of the archive, there is really only one true failure, and that is the cost of being nothing. Being wrong, that actually allows you to learn, to pivot, to grow. But that stochastic oscillation we just talked about, that endless pacing, that guarantees you become absolutely nothing.
To actually build a legacy, you have to embrace what we call the clinical sacrifice. And it's heavy. Choosing one path means the violent execution of every other potential future. It is literally a bloodbath of the imagination. You have to kill off the version of you that could have been a musician or a world traveler or just a comfort seeker in order to allow the true sovereign version to finally take a breath.
This brings us to the geometry of choice. Think of a compass, okay? A perfectly straight line is only possible when you brutally, clinically, ignore every single other degree on that compass. You set your bearing, and you deliberately blind yourself to all the rest. It's the only way to move forward.
So how do we do this? We implement the somatic bypass. When that physical sensation of indecision rises up, you know the feeling, the tightness in your throat, the coldness in your hands. You need to instantly recognize it as a mechanical error. It's just the insula misfiring. That's all it is. Do not negotiate with a machine. Execute the choice, not because you're 100% certain of the outcome, but because you are absolutely certain of your own command.
Listen to me. By the time you reach the end of this explainer, one ghost in your life must die. One door must be bolted shut. One perhaps must become a forever. The neural tax stops right here, right now. All that energy you used to spend on hesitation must now be completely redirected into the construction of your citadel.
Because you are no longer a victim of biological entropy. No, you are the architect of your own necessity. The absolute gold of your life is found hiding in the decisions you were most terrified to make. It is time to take that gold and pour it directly into the cracks of your will. The archive is watching. The ancestors are silent. The unborn are waiting. Decide. What is the one monumental choice you are going to strip of its power, ossify into solid stone, and finally execute today?